Hello and welcome to Working Group API Expression. We have our agenda, and I don't know, Mike, were you one of the people that had scheduling problems and wanted to go first with the API guidelines?
Okay, I worked with Tim and one other person. We looked at the existing couple of docs there's one about guidelines and one about how to make a change, and came up with a revised outline for a merger of the two docs.
Have you got a document we should link, or are you still working on?
Well, so far we just have an outline. I'm not aware of anything more. Actually, let me see if I can even find that. I think it's still a work in progress. I haven't had a chance to do any more work besides get the outline, get the outline started.
Okay. If you need anything there, you can also ping us in the chat again. And if there's nothing more on the agenda, we can continue with the server-side apply items. Or does anyone have remaining points for this?
Sorry, I'm slow with operating the machinery here. Well, it looks like you got the document link. If not, I can provide that.
I was hoping somebody would link there.
Yeah, I'll get it in there.
In the notes. Yeah, I was just thinking it'd be good to have a status update for the stuff that we are working on, so we don't start working on more things than we can reasonably make progress on.
Okay. First, the client-side to server-side transition. I read quite a few discussions over the last 2 weeks, but I don't know if Julian is here. Can't see him in the list. So there's still some discussion on whether to keep the last applied annotation from kubectl and upgrade it or keep track of it, but I'm not completely familiar with the current state.
I think at least Antoine convinced me that it was not too hard to keep it up to date and it would be convenient for users. So I think at least the conversation I had with Antoine settled. I'm not sure if that got propagated to the is it Julian's PR? I'm not sure if that got propagated yet.
Yeah. We talked with Julian. I think Julian is doing what has to be done. Yeah.
Great. I think that's on upgrade here. I read this comment from Jordan and Antoine replied already. Okay. Oh, there's more comments. I don't know if Jenny's working on it or how the progress is here. Is Jenny here?
Hi all, I just, sorry I'm late, I'm juggling meetings this morning. I just heard my name, where are we?
I think he said Jenny, not Tim.
Oh, sorry.
No, I was confused. Okay, yeah. No, if we were here and I asked if Jenny's here, it doesn't seem like it. Yeah, I've well, that's status code.
Kevin, can you go back to where Jordan commented? I think it's important to talk about.
Okay, yeah, I got the comment.
So Jordan was mentioning that if we change the default in kubectl 119 anybody using kubectl 119 against a 118 cluster is going to have the problems that we have with 118.
Oh, so the actual issue here with the default associative keys.
Right. So what it means is that if you have a deployment and you don't specify the protocol, you're going to have a failure.
Mm-hmm.
And if we make it the default, then yeah, it's going to fail for people automatically.
Okay. Do we have a? I suppose we have no way to make it work.
To make it what?
To make it work with the old server, the new client with the old API server.
Yeah, we would need to know what version of the server we have, which we can't. So I don't know how to do that yet.
Can we
Sorry,
at least?
I missed something on the. I missed a question. What are we talking about? I was trying to get Jenny to show up.
Okay, so today, if you try to server-side apply a deployment and you have a port but you don't have a TCP protocol, it's gonna fail. And if we make it the default, we're planning on fixing that.
This is the thing that that Jenny's working on. Oh, I see. It's Jordan's comment that you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, so the plan is to fix that and make it the default, but new clients that are going to default to server-side apply are going to fail on older versions of Kube API server, like 118, by default.
Can we at least backport this?
Backporting won't really help.
Can I ask a question? So I'm reading the text here on the screen. Container port protocol is not a required field in the sense that the user doesn't have to set it, but it is a required field in the sense that it has to be set. It's just that it gets set with a default. Does that not work?
Yeah, that's the case. The problem is that the defaulter runs after server-side apply. So server-side apply deliberately sees exactly the user's intent and not the defaulted version of the object. Because we make a strong distinction between things that the user specifically requested and things that the system has added on to make the request complete.
So that seems like it's going to be problematic in a lot of places where API.
No, it is problematic exactly and only when the defaulted field is part of a key. So the problem here is really that container port. The key isn't sufficiently unique, and you have to add the protocol to make it unique.
I see.
And server-side apply remembers the key because you want to own the item that you've made a claim about in your source document, right? So
I'm so sorry.
Yes,
I'm sorry for all the pain that I've caused with all the ports have repeatedly been a pain in your guys' butt, and I'm so sorry.
Yeah. It does occur to me that for once I can blame someone other than myself for this condition.
No, this is totally on us. I don't know what to do to help you. Thank you for catching.
Yeah. This is basically the entire reason why server-side apply supports multiple key fields is because we have this problem.
Yeah, I mean, in the desire to not stringly type a field, we broke it down into its constituent components like port and protocol, which made the need for uniqueness span fields.
I mean, we would have the same problem if it was a string anyway.
I think the way out of this would have been to name the port and just require a name.
Yes.
Yeah, maybe. There's some debate in hindsight. There's questions around even service where actually it would be nice if name wasn't required unique, because name is used for things like SRV records, and So having to
Then
use
there-
different names.
Then there should be a name or
Sure.
an ID field and a SRV record field, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we shouldn't mix the identity of the thing that you're controlling with like something that is published somewhere and is important for other reasons.
Yes. I'll let you know when my time machine gets back.
Yeah, mine's on order, back order also. So I think Jenny's working on this. I chatted at her, but I don't know if she's seen it yet.
Yeah, so the problem seems to be that when we fix it for 119, at the client, a new client will still get the error for an old API server.
Is that really a huge deal?
What if I know at Google we have automatic update of kubectl or something. Maybe somewhere people have their kubectl being automatically updated. It's definitely not updated for servers as fast as it is for clients.
But I think if you got kube control over G Cloud, I think it's actually a version or two old deliberately to have compatibility with as many clusters as possible.
The T-Cloud one is older, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's actually not a good argument, but maybe other people do differently.
Yeah. Yes. I don't know how we can fix it anyway.
Yeah.
What is the? I don't know why. Hold on. Let me just respond to Jordan if I can find this. Planning document. Okay, I found it. I'm gonna make him explain to me in small words why it's important, because I'm not convinced. Yeah. Okay. How about the action item here is I'll take it up with Jordan. How about that?
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Sounds good. Good. Then the next one was the apply status. So returning a status information when the object changes or not. And there was an ongoing discussion in here. I'm not sure about the current state of it.
I suspect Daniel started changing his opinion. I don't know exactly. And the action item is on me to go to, and Julian also, we've added an item to the 6CLI meeting to talk about it next week.
Oh, so on this one, there was some confusion in the comments about whether the status code was a kube control status code or an API server status code.
Yeah.
I think everybody agreed that it didn't make sense to have kube control return a different status code. So I think it was actually about the API server status code. And I think we all agreed that we're not going to change status code, but we might add a header.
Yes.
So the question that's outstanding is it important enough to merit a new header?
Yes.
When we got the issue, we discussed it with the reporter on Slack, I think, and the result was a cap. And to the cap, the user, or the reporter said that's exactly what he wanted. And in the cap, there was no mention of a status code except from a HTTP status code, which wouldn't work because there is no matching one. That's my state. He's also mentioning a header, so I would suspect he's talking about HTTP and not a kubectl with the status code. But yeah, that was my status on that. So I at first didn't know why you were discussing exit codes. But yeah, the header, we would have to decide on that.
But I think the status of this item is we're waiting to see if it is wanted by like more than one person, basically.
Yeah, that's why I want to
Is
talk
that
to
accurate?
CLI meeting about it.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's okay. And so the action item here is Antoine is going to bring it up with CLI, CLI. Okay.
Yeah, and also there is already a cap for it with a suggestion, so it's also possible to discuss or comment there instead of the issue for less confusion about the actual title, because distinct status code might actually be understood differently. Okay. Then status wiping is still keeping me busy in ways I didn't imagine. So I tried the old approach to call the status wiping or the prepare for update method in apply on the applied object again, and we found out why it didn't work. And now I'm looking at a better way to define the field sets next to the wiping methods to keep it closer together, and also include stuff that gets decided at runtime, like feature flags. It still won't include stuff that gets decided based on the object, like is there a field on the old object, and if yes, don't wipe, which is combined with feature flags most of the time. But at least that makes the feature flags possible and easier to use. We had a discussion yesterday if there should be different fields for create and update, because there is situations where the fields resets are different for create and update. Not many, but a few, and I think we still have to agree on something there. But yeah, it's still work. And to make the resetting of the fields possible for update, I'll add an additional parameter to the update in SND, so we can ignore fields that don't get owned and disowned at all, which is because the current one to remove fields from the update object doesn't work, because it's then removing fields, and update claims them as removed and disowns or changes ownership respectively.
Are you going to pass a field set of things to ignore? Okay.
Yeah, and then they won't get changed at all. And for apply, we still can just remove the fields that are defined in the field set, and they won't get applied. Oh, yeah, we discussed that we should fail, if we should fail for apply, if fields get applied that are in this field set. And I suppose there is opinions here.
Yeah, so I think it makes sense to fail if we apply status, for example. The only problem is backward compatibility. But somehow it's so bad that you're doing that that you should probably fix something if you are doing that. Do you have an opinion on that, Daniel?
Sorry, I missed that.
Okay, yeah. If you apply status, I think it should fail. We don't today, so that would be sort of backwards incompatible.
Wait. If you apply, if you
try to
apply status. If you apply to spec and include status, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, it would be nice to users if they at least got a warning and knew that they're doing something that is being ignored. But we don't, for all of our API calls today, we just silently drop everything that you tried to do to status if you're writing to the spec endpoint.
Yeah, I know.
Not super user friendly. Do we have to solve that problem right now, though?
Well, the longer we wait, the worse it's going to be when we break the compatibility.
I guess like if you want to solve the user implications of this, that seems like it makes it a harder problem than just solving the most important blocker.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Also, I suspect we can solve that by later we could say if you force the conflicts, then we're gonna make it work no matter what, and if you don't, then we're gonna fail on these.
Possibly. I mean, I personally, I would optimize for getting the just the solution in so that we have something. If that it gets in rapidly, then we can iterate on the user implications of it, since it seems like we have a little extra time in this release anyway. But I wouldn't block on figuring out the user stuff. Like, let's divide and conquer, let's solve our problem separately.
Yeah, I don't
If that
disagree.
makes sense.
If we already had a warning mechanism, we could warn and sort of deprecate the bug/feature. And then
I think I'd be opposed to a warning for this, to be honest.
What do you think we should do?
Fail.
Yeah, I'm nervous about I'm nervous about failing because none of our existing APIs work that way, and people might be depending on that.
Well, yeah, on apply.
What happens? Yeah, what happens if you do it in client-side apply? We just silently drop it, right?
Yeah, which is really wrong in my opinion.
Yeah, it's definitely really wrong. How many points of user interaction do we want to carefully think about in this?
Yeah, no, again, I don't disagree with that.
Like we only have so much like design and implementation thought points, and I think we should spend them on getting the basic feature bulletproof.
Yeah. Sure.
One thing that might fit the theme is I thought several times about it, why this isn't any part of validation, or why it's not even in the API schema that those fields get wiped at all. And nobody knows about it except if you find it out or see it in the code, or it maybe is documented somewhere.
Yeah. It's basically kind of unfinished. I would say. When Jordan's warning feature goes in, it will be slightly easier to change this behavior. The problem is it's kind of a load-bearing bug, like clients who are randomly setting things in their status, or whether they realize it or not, depending on that being ignored. So making it fail would break them because they're not expecting these failures, and making it like actually carry out what they said would also break them because they're not intending to actually change status. And we don't have good data on how many people are actually in this bucket, so it's hard to make decisions.
Because while building it, we're so concerned that that's the way I'm doing it right now is barely testable, and it seems a bit dangerous, and I don't feel too safe adding it, but we have to fix it somehow. And one thing I looked at was, can we define those fields get wiped for status and for sub-resources somewhere, and maybe generate the code, but that doesn't seem to match any specifications. So that's why I thought about, it's weird that it's defined nowhere and just there.
Yeah, it's because it was written kind of ad hoc, right? The CRD version of this is probably more rigorous, but I think the way it has to work is that there's going to be a list of fields that need to get cleared for a given sub-resource, possibly per version, and then like today, the status wiping is just people clearing fields in a type to go object, right? I mean, it should be pretty. Since we do have the object represented as JSON at some point, or as a interface, the SMD value interface at some point. It seems like it should be fairly trivial to write a bit of code that takes a field set and clears or deletes all those fields, or makes a synthetic value interface that just pretends those fields don't exist or something like that, and use that to actually do the clearing. I think it is fine to actually duplicate this in the short term, at least. With there's code today, and we'll put this in, and we'll have two sources of truth, or two sources of falsehood, I guess. You can't have two sources of truth. And we can condense it in the future. But I mean, I personally would optimize for getting the behavior in and then fixing it, rather than trying to make it perfect at the beginning. Just on the principle that it's easier to steer a moving ship than it is to get the ship started in the first place. As long as it's not breaking people and obviously wrong, like, it can't be fixed.
Yeah, mostly those intentions were a result of frustration of looking at it and trying to make it safe, because not being able to retest it is concerning.
Yeah, I mean, just adding testing is maybe worth it, just to demonstrate that it is safe. So if it seems under-tested, the testing helps not only prove that it's safe, but it also helps demonstrate what the actual rule is, right?
Yeah, so there is an integration test that uses the test data that is available for integration tests, and applies the object, updates the object, creates the object, updates status, and checks if there is an overlap of status for now, only status. But it's hard to confirm that the stuff is
So I would actually consider doing it a slightly different way, and maybe you can do this generally, because we have some fuzz testing right now.
Yeah.
That like generates random objects, basically. So if you can figure out a way to call the existing code to do a wipe and like fuzz an object, call the existing code to clear things if you can figure out how, call the new code to clear things and a copy of the object, and then compare the results and verify that they're equal. Like, that's a general way of testing this to make sure that that is the same.
Yeah, I looked at the available fuzzers, but they are built for the typed Go objects. And I didn't find a way to create a typed Go object from like something from discovery for all types that are available to the server.
But that should already, like, we already run those on all typed objects, so you should be able to test that. Right?
Okay.
Not in an integration test, but in the fuzzing unit tests. Like, this is testable in unit tests.
Okay. Then I'll
that's good. If we can do it as a unit test, that'd be nice.
Yeah. I think that the only difficulty is going to be calling the existing wiping code, because it might actually it might just work. Yeah, you might be able to call it.
Is it fuzzing for API for external or internal versions?
It's for the internal versions, but as part of that test suite, part of the purpose of that test suite is to make sure that the conversion functions are round trip things. So it should be converting into multiple external versions and testing each one.
Okay, then I'll look for those.
But that would be the place that I would write this test.
Yeah.
You may have to do something fancy to get all the right, like prepare for update functions to call, but I think that that's probably the best way to test this.
Okay, yeah, I'll look for those.
And a good test for this would just basically make all the problems go away, I think.
Yeah. Do you have an opinion on the question? So the way I built the new approach now was that I exposed the reset fields for the strategy, both for the create strategy and the update strategy, because they can be either not available or different. So there's the current way I started to do it yesterday is I could have two different sets of fields for create and update. And we were discussing if they actually are required or if there's situations where they can be different and should be different. And
did you find a case where they're different?
Wait, let's pull up our chat because I had examples in here. So for one thing, there is situations where the status doesn't get wiped completely, but gets reset to a specific state, like for namespaces, the phase is being set, and for pods as well, and the QoS class.
Yeah, but that's not like the user is not owning those fields. That's just like defaulting a blank namespace.
Yeah, but should a user be able to intend to own them? And when there's
No.
Okay.
No, a creator of an object, you can't own a field in status as the result of that. I think we can just make that blanket statement.
Okay. And another would be for namespace, the finalizers, because you can set those on create, but you can't update them aside from running through finalize. And only the Q finalizer gets added.
The question is, can the user really own them if you can't update them after you set them?
You can, as far as I've seen, you can change them through the finalize sub-resource.
Uh-huh.
But I'm not sure about that. That's what I've seen so far.
Honestly, I don't think that matters too much. I would just say that sure, if the user included that intent, then sure, the user owns them. Yeah. But
they shouldn't be able to own them for update because they can't.
I mean, if you try to change them on update, you will get an error, right?
I don't know how finalizers work yet, so I just know that the field is there.
So namespaces have these extra finalizers because we added them to namespaces before they regularized them. So there's finalizers in metadata, which apply to everything and are mutable after the fact. And then there's finalizers on namespaces, which is this additional field in spec. And if they get reset on updates, so you're saying we silently drop the user's changes, then that means if I change them in apply and we silently drop them, then it appears to have worked even though my change didn't do anything. And the problem, what exactly is the problem? That, right, like if it gets reset on updates, then does it really matter if we track it as a managed field or not?
If you can actually change them through the sub-resource, then it matters that you would own them, but they would get reset on update, but not like that you also would own them on a sub-resource. So that's the original conflict we have with status.
You're worried about somebody going through the sub-resource and ending up owning them, and then the user taking those over.
Getting the conflict with somebody who didn't actually change them.
Somebody who didn't actually change them.
So one user goes and updates, finalizes through update, and the field gets reset, but the field manager gives them ownership. And then somebody goes through the finalize and gets a conflict with a user who didn't change the finalized fields.
So the system basically said that you got them even though you didn't actually change their value. It just transferred ownership without changing the value. And
Yeah,
then
that's
someone who
sub-resource
uses
problem.
finalize gets a conflict because they have the current value. They didn't change it, but it thinks that they don't own the field.
Yeah.
So here's the question for you. If we get this wrong now, can we change it without breaking, can we change it in the future without breaking users? I think the answer is yes. Like imagine we just launched the way it is today with this problem. I would initially claim that this is going to affect almost nobody. I can't imagine somebody using apply to manage the namespace finalizers, because I think that's basically automatically done right now. So that's going to be one of the last things to get changed. And also the consequences are just not that high, because someone using apply to manage the the finalizers is going to force conflicts all the time. So I think that this is not that important. So it's not the end of the world if we get it wrong.
Yeah.
That said, my opinion is, do I have an opinion?
So there is nothing to go live with now. If we leave the problem aside, we got one strategy with one set of fields. It gets reset, either one of them. We make the problem better for most things, probably status, and we leave the problems we currently have and don't know about on the table to fix them later. We improve the state. I already got the code to have two sets of fields, and I define them for update and create. I could get rid of this, but the question is if I should.
Yeah, it does seem like the most natural way of modeling this is that if you set it in create, then you own the field, but then your future update, which also includes these, I mean, what are we going to do on your update? Like, because really you can't affect those fields at all. So does it make sense to own them? You can't affect those fields at all through a normal operation. I mean, I guess if you went through finalize, the problem. So the problem is if you think in terms of the source document, like, right, like I start with a partially specified namespace object, which includes a finalizer, and I'm gonna create this, and then I'm gonna modify my document and update it, or I'm gonna apply it again, and basically the fact that the field is treated this way means that I can't use the same document for both creates and updates, because part of it will be honored for a create, but not honored for an update. So do I really own that field? Like, I'm responsible for it being the way it is, but if I wanted to affect that field, I'd have to send a completely different kind of document to a different API endpoint, to the finalize endpoint. It's also the sort of thing where the person, yeah. So I think I would be tempted just to say you don't get ownership on either create or update. Your intent is honored on create, but we don't make you an owner.
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Okay. Yep.
And yeah. The real problem here is that is a weird user interface, and it's like kind of a crime to be clearing fields without giving the user an error, like if they try to change it, but that won't have any effect. Yeah, I'm not sure why it's like that.
Okay, I think just redline certificates were a different example, but they seem to be immutable, and some parts can be accessed through sub-resources, but I suppose you shouldn't own them. I guess the same argument you just made. If you can't change the field, there's no reason to own it. Also, that would make the managed field smaller because they wouldn't include stuff that just got created, but can never be updated.
Yeah, so maybe a potential rule here is if you cannot update the field with the same kind of document, then you shouldn't own the field. You shouldn't take ownership. Does that make sense as a general rule?
Yep. Yep, I think so. Okay. Cool. Good. Then tracking sub-resources. I think we're going to help needed there. So I don't know. I think we made no progress. It might be related to what I'm doing right now, and we'll see when it's done.
Yeah, no one's working on that.
Yeah. We still got the declarative field manager open, but no one is discussing or working on that right now. I think it's not that important to discuss it now. And
do you want to talk about the documentation, Mike?
We already did talk about it a little bit.
Yeah. I don't have a lot more to say. I'll share the pointer to the doc that we produced. Let me just get that handy here.
We actually put a link. Was that Ken? Put a link in the agenda document. If you flip back over to that one.
no access.
Yeah, I don't have
pretty-
access
Send
either.
some emails.
I have access, but I don't have the ability to share. That's pretty tight restrictions. So I'm not sure who owns that. I think maybe it's Tim. I'll follow up and see if we can get it more public.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I asked for permission, so whoever owns it will see my request.
Okay, so yeah, we just so far all I've had time to do is do the initial work to produce that outline, but we intend to go through and flesh it out some more. So that's all I've got right now.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, and we have Jordan's warnings that got discussed several times, and I don't know about that one.
Yeah, I created this one. We need to find sets of fields that we want to know if we should be removing or not the fields when they're removed from a applied configuration. We suspect the behavior should change for some fields, or should be different for some fields and others. We would like to have a set of fields and see what sort of behavior we expect for each field and see if we need to change the current policy. Daniel seems to think that it's sort of confusing today. I don't disagree. I think it's confusing today. So we're trying to collect some fields and see how people would expect the behavior to be depending on the field.
So what exactly is happening there? That's the problem. You
So
apply
right
an
now,
object without.
Yeah, if you remove a field from your config and apply it, it's not going to be removed from the object.
Even if nobody owns it.
Right.
Okay.
We call it dangling.
Right, and I maintain that this is correct for some fields and not correct for other fields. Like I was personally quite surprised when it didn't work that way for the arguments list in the pod, or technically a pod template in a deployment.
Okay, now that's really surprising. I suppose it will computer break people using apply with kubectl as they are used to.
Yeah. It's gonna
Yeah,
fix some
but
of the code, to be honest.
It also, I mean, it might prevent you from using apply if you can't, like you're checking something into source control and you need to switch from, to use my example, arguments to the command line in your deployment. You switch that in source control, but when your CI/CD pipeline applies that, it doesn't actually remove the old field. Like, how are you gonna you can't use apply if you can't remove stuff that you don't want anymore.
Yeah. Then we also have an item on both old work items tracking mechanisms to think about negative intent, like I want to remove something.
Yeah, that's somewhat related, and that would be like the catch-all solution. Like if it is making a mistake, then it would be good to be able to specify like an assertion of non-existence to make sure that a given field is gone. And maybe that's the solution here is like don't guess, just make users tell us. But I think it would be better if we at least got the majority of obvious cases right.
Yeah.
So I think the action item here is Antoine is working on getting a list of examples of fields where the default user expectation is, here's a field. Does a user expect this to stick around or go away when they remove it? I think there's a chance that we can come up with a simple rule that solves most cases, but maybe we can't. But we need a list of examples to know for sure.
Okay. Yep. Aside from that, we got some list tasks. Oh, that's done.
Yay. I see Joe is on the call. Joe, can you talk to us about what you're doing?
So I just got back from break and I am trying to get caught up on everything going on. I did have a task to review many of the uses of built-in validators for native types and see what the overlap with those are on some of the declarative approaches we have, and see if we can start to reduce duplication, use the declarative stuff instead of custom code in certain places. So I've started that, and there's definitely some patterns there. I will try and get some progress on that and have an update next week.
What you're doing is not part of this document, is it?
No, we're not tracking that anywhere yet. And I
Really?
believe that the phrase that we used for that was like something like universal validation.
Oh, the universal schema. Yeah, we should probably, Daniel wrote this document. I suspect we should maybe merge it into this document. What do you think, Daniel?
Which document did I write?
The universal schema?
It was one of your one-pagers.
Yeah, but does it make sense to merge it into this document or just refer to it?
I don't actually know about that document.
If it's a task we're doing, we should probably have it in this document.
Okay, we can have a reference to it, or I don't know if I intended to. Did I make that public? I don't remember.
There wasn't anything secret yet. So.
Yeah, there wasn't anything secret in it. It's just like it was kind of half baked. That's all.
Okay, let's see. I'll add a section.
Cool, and you can just add a placeholder for now. I can get that
Exactly,
organized and filled out.
Okay, yeah.
Make schema. Okay, cool.
Okay. Yeah, okay. And we got a backlog, a long one. Well, moderately long, but I don't think anything changed here.
Oh, there it is. There it is.
Oh,
okay.
API clients.
That's the thing.
Daniel, did you find somebody for API clients?
I removed my name. Extending schema validation. That's the thing, right?
No, I have not found a person to work on this yet. Sorry, I have been working on other stuff. Kind of lost the train of thought on
just
that.
asking.
Yeah. Yeah, I should put that back in my list of things to think about. I think I might even write add some detail to that document. I'm not sure.
Okay, then I think we're through with the action items. Cool. Anything else?
Nope, I've got to drop anyway.
Okay.
So
Thanks, everybody.
And I'll stop recording.